What's up, y'all? It's Ryan from A Taste of the World. Today I'm reviewing a book. I'm in Italy, Florence, so I figured what better place to review Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. No, it doesn't have anything to do with meditating in the Indian sense of the word, but rather a collection of Marcus Aurelius's own personal notes. His book has been called one of the noblest writings of ancient times. A recurring theme is his emphasis on virtue rather than pleasure as a key to inner peace. In his own words, the prime principle in man's constitution is the social. His ideas throughout the book are reflective of Stoicism, which became popular to the Romans, the Roman elite in that time. He was born in 121 AD. Both his parents died at a young age, and he was adopted by his grandfather. So when he finally came into power, he was greeted with natural disaster and outbreak of plague. So not exactly the best welcome, but he's the kind of guy, he sold off all his expensive jewelry to help those that were affected. Kind of says something about the man. So in 176 AD, that's when Marcus wrote his memoirs called Meditations, originally titled To Himself, intending that nearly all of the writings were just a series of private collections for himself. I'm going to talk about some of the things throughout the book, quotes, sections, sentences that I found just really powerful. So here we go. This is straight from the book. Let no act be done without purpose. Men seek retreat for themselves in houses and countrysides, seashores, mountains. And he says, this is the mark of the most common sort of man. But the truth is, it's in our power to retreat to that kind of empty space, that deep down part of us at any time. We don't have to go travel somewhere to think about things. We can do that at any time, and we should do that at any time. And when we do that, he says we should do that constantly. And when we think about our principles and back to our core values, it should be very simple, not very complicated. That way it's very easy and quick to cleanse the soul completely. He says, perhaps the desire of fame torments you, but you must see how soon everything is forgotten and look at the chaos of infinite time. One of the recurring things, how much does all of this really matter? How much should we invest our emotions into things in life? If you look at it on such a grand scale, all we can do is make small ripples in this life. He says that it's natural, by the laws of nature, for a certain kind of person to do a certain kind of work. And it's actually a matter of necessity. He says, run to the short way, as the shortest way is the most natural according to the conformity of the natural laws. This might be contradictory to some other things you've read or heard, as far as don't take the path of least resistance. But I don't think he's talking about do the easiest thing. I think what he's saying is do what comes most natural. He says when you rise to do the work of a human being. Just as a bee rises to do his work, ants rise to do the work that they are here for, and plants wake up every day working what they're supposed to do in this universe. He talks about not expecting much praise or looking for responses from the outside world. As a bee, when he makes his honey, he's not looking for praise or calling over all the animals in the animal kingdom to see what good job he's done. He says, do not be disgusted or discouraged at yourself if you're not living up to the values that you set 100%. It's almost impossible as a human to avoid reactions that we have built into us. Just be happy that you're, for the most part, doing what you set out to do. Live the values that you imposed upon yourself. He says, your habitual thoughts change your mind, and your mind changes your soul. So in that, our soul is actually died by our mind, which is died by our thoughts. So it's very important to have control over your habitual thoughts. He says, where a man can live, he can live well. If he is born into a place that has not much opportunity, he can live well in that place. It's up to him. He says, don't let it make a difference whether you're cold, warm, drowsy, don't have much sleep. That's just very small part of what you need to do and go through to live your purpose. And don't be affected by external things like that. He says how strange it is that we praise people we don't know, people that are famous, but yet we don't praise the people around us enough. As much as a strong character Marcus Aurelius seems to be, he says, if any man can prove to me that I am wrong, I will change, because what I seek is the truth. In truth, no man was ever injured. Only injuries come from ignorance and unwillingness to change. If you wish to delight yourself, think of the virtues in the people around you. You might know someone who is giving. Appreciate that and their infinite givingness. You might know someone who is modest. Notice how modest they are. Appreciate their infinite modesty. So we can appreciate the qualities that we seek in the people around us. Each person has a quality that they've cultivated and that they have an infinite reservoir. And we can appreciate that in just the people around us. He says, in a little while you'll have forgotten everything. And in a little while, everything will have forgotten you. And that's something that rings true with me. I always think, in 100 years, 200 years, 500 years, no one is going to know who I am. Very few people will be remembered. If you think about the Egyptian times, how many people lived during that time? Hundreds of thousands, if not millions. How many of those people do we remember? You can probably count them on your hands. So those people are not forgotten. Their life has melted into our evolution and what we have today. But no specific person, other than the 10 people you can count on your hand, is remembered. So any little anxieties you have about, should I say this, or I'm afraid how I'll look if I do that, is just completely meaningless, because no one is going to remember it. It's not important in the grand scheme of things. He said we should love even those who do wrong. Why? Because they're humans, just like we're humans. And they do wrong unintentionally and because they're ignorant. And soon we will both die. And whatever the wrongdoing was, most likely it doesn't affect your own faculties and how you see the world. He says, wipe out the imagination. Confine yourself to the present. Don't let your thoughts make something out of nothing. He says, a man who sees the view of all time and all substance, how can he look at one man's life as important in that grand scheme of things? Like I said, how important is one man's life? Also, how important is death in that grand scheme of the eternity of earth, of souls? I mean, we are just one small microscopic soul in the massive collection of souls that have ever existed. He says the art of life is more like wrestlers rather than dancers, in that you must be ready to handle challenges that are unexpected. And how you do that is the art of your life. It says the perfection of moral character is passing every day as if it was your last, and neither being violently excited or lethargic nor a hypocrite. He says when you do a good act, why are we looking for other people to see that good act? Is it because you want something in return, or you want praise from other people? If so, that's not the right reason to do it. He says there's nothing good for man that does not make him temperate, just, manly, and free. So whatever you're doing, it should be making you more temperate, more just, more manly, more free. And on the contrary, there's nothing bad that will give you those four qualities either. Consider that men will do what they want to do. No matter how angry you get with them or how much of a fuss you put up on a fight. It doesn't matter. People are going to do what they're going to do. So another quote he says is like, Imagine every man who gets angry and violently passionate and discontented as a squealing pig that's getting ready for slaughter. It's useless. It says everything exists for some end, from a plant's vine to a horse to even the sun. All has a beginning and an end and a purpose. And we must ask ourselves, what is our purpose? Is it to seek pleasure? He says, ask if common sense allows that. He asks, if we're in pain about something, why do we rather complain rather than act? That's something that I resonate with, because when I'm feeling down or low, it doesn't help to just sit there and think my way out of it. The best thing to do is act, and that brings me out of it. And by taking action, I'm beginning to overcome whatever fear or anxieties I had. He says, say nothing more to yourself than what the first appearances bring when you see something, a situation. Just take in the first appearances of what's going on and don't add something to it from your own mind. In this way, you'll be free and nothing happens to you inside. It says, he who does not know the world and how it exists, why it exists, does not know himself or why he exists. As tough as this one is to swallow, he says, loss is nothing more than change. So you can tell he has an idea about life that is very rigid, can be seen as very rigid. But when you hear it, you know it's true. Loss is nothing more than change. And what is it on the grand scale? It's part of life. He says the healthy eye should be able to see all things. Only a diseased eye will see things and wish to see other things. A healthy nose should be able to smell all things. A healthy stomach should be able to eat all things. Just as a mill grinds all things. Doesn't take prejudice. It's open to what the universe, earth, has to offer. He says you will put little value on pleasant song and dance. Now, I'm a musician. I sing a little karaoke. I enjoy song. But what I think he says here is, what's important is not how we screw off. It's what we do with our life, not how much fun we have. That's again his major theme in this book is life is not about what brings you pleasure, but rather the purpose you have. He says if you've done something for the general interest, that is your reward. And try to always think through life about providing for the general interest of nature and others. It's very important to him to be connected with your fellow brother, your fellow man, your fellow woman. And if you become disconnected from one man, you become disconnected from society, from the social network, because that one man is a part of that social. So if you can't relate to him, there's something missing. He says there's no nature that's inferior to the arts. I'm here in Florence. You could call it art capital. Some of the most amazing sculptures, art, paintings you'll ever see, architecture. And I just saw the David, Michelangelo's David, and it's one of the most incredible things I've ever seen, very powerful. But I hear what he says here is that nature is just as amazing, just as powerful, if we can see it that way. And art is just a reflection of nature, just as David is a reflection of a human being. He says also consider that maybe you don't know if a man's doing right or wrong, because it can take many years and many experiences to determine properly whether that man is doing something wrong or not. So to withhold judgment until you have the proper experience to give judgment. It says we must avoid flattering men or being vexed by them. Both are unsocial and lead to harm. So we shouldn't ever idolize somebody or hate somebody so much. Both are unsocial and not good for you. It says to be moved by passion is not manly. And what he means here is to be overcome in a fit of rage, a fit of passion, is not manly. What is more manly is to possess strength, nerves, courage, be unmoved by situations. He says, to the degree a man is free from passion is the degree a man has strength. He says, to see a man behave poorly or wrong to others and expect him to act any differently towards you is irrational and tyrannical. What makes you think that you are going to change this man? It says we're composed of three things: body, breath, and intelligence. It says the first two are ours in that we need to take care of it. We need to take care of our body. We need to take care of our life, breath. But they were given to us in some sense. But intelligence is ours truly alone, and it's up to us to control that, to nourish that. He asks a great question. How is it that every man loves himself more than all other men, just as we're always thinking about ourselves? We're always thinking what's in our best interest. But at the same time, we put more value on what other people think of us. So it doesn't make any sense. Why are we always thinking about ourselves as if we're the most important thing in the world, but at the same time, we're not even listening to ourselves as if we're the most important voice in the world? So it's contradictory, doesn't it? He says opinion is one of our biggest problems. If we cast away our opinion, we are saved in a situation. Once we create that opinion within ourselves, we've created pain. We've created anxiety. If we can close off our opinion, stop our opinion, just look at things as they are, first appearances, we'll be saved. He's asked, how does he honor things that are not seen? Laws of nature, gods. He says, I have not seen my soul, but I honor that. So that is my review of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He was a Roman emperor between 121 and 180 AD. Great book, very easy read, you can see. It's not that long at all. For such a short, small book, it's actually got really powerful content. And I'd suggest reading to anybody, whether you're Catholic, Christian, Muslim, atheist. It's a set of ideas that is very hard to ignore once you've read them. And what he says is, take it with a grain of salt, take it however you want, but you'll see he speaks in truths, in laws of nature and laws of truth, and it's impossible to ignore that. So I hope that you enjoy the book. I did. If you like what you saw here, please subscribe or like to my channel. I'll be looking forward to doing more book reviews. I have all kinds of great videos on my channels, A Taste for the World. I'm Ryan, signing off. Have a great day.